Hello and welcome everyone to our SBT Sutra Studies class. My name is Venerable Tarpa. Before we begin, let's take a moment to appreciate our intelligent and kind community gathered here today. Today I feel fortunate to sit as a member of this kind community in the safety and security of like-minded friends, sharing this present moment with others dedicated to the cultivation of goodness. Today, I'm grateful for the direction and support that this community provides, a community worthy of my time and commitment, a community where my efforts have meaning, purpose, and are appreciated. Today, I'm thankful for this community of awakening, a place to gain the knowledge and skills to improve my life, a family, a home, and a sanctuary for all of us seeking refuge from the storm. And let's remember, as conscientious practitioners, we must recognize our responsibility to the world, to strive to live skillfully while helping others to do the same, to strive to live in balance and harmony with nature and others, to strive to gain mastery over our minds and embody our true benevolent nature, to expand our hearts and minds, transcending our shared human limitations, to not intentionally harm sentient life or our planet, and to maturely accept and embrace the reality of our situation while always striving to improve it. Again, welcome to our class. We are currently examining the Dhammapada. Today we will be covering chapter 18 entitled Corruption. And what's interesting is that each one of the texts that we compare have a different title for this chapter. So I think that that's quite fascinating. Let's put it up here while we're talking about it. Here we go. So for Gaten Schippels, we have defilements. And for Buddha he calls it impurity. And in Gil Fransdale's account, he calls it corruption. So that gives us a little idea of the different things. Let me take 1 second and look around here for a second. Neil, could I use you for tech support?
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Would you also be interested in a little bit of reading?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Darcy, can I count on you for some reading? How about Susan? Would you like to do some reading for us? Okay. Great, let's do that. Very kind of all of you. Leave me to the important thing of pushing buttons. That's the hardest part of this whole job. And so each set of verses is kind of in chunks here. So I think we're just going to read through each kind of chunk or grouping. Chunk, very official word, chunk, a grouping of verses. I have to remember I'm a teacher here. Can we start? How'd you like to start, Darcy? Would you like to start with 235 and then read right through 239?
Okay. You are like a yellow leaf. The minions of the Lord of Death await you. You stand in the jaws of death with no provisions for your journey. Make of yourself an island. Quickly become vigorous and wise. Clear away your impurities and faults, and you will reach the heavens of the saints. Now your time has run out, and soon you will meet the Lord of Death. There are no havens on this journey, and you have no provisions for the road. Make of yourself an island, quickly become vigorous and wise. Clear away your impurities and faults, and no longer be subject to birth and old age. Little by little, by stages, moment by moment, the wise man clears away his faults as a smith removes the dross from silver.
Oh, you did a great job reading. Susan, would you like to read a little bit, 235 to 239? I let Susan read these because she's really good at reading, and Buddhaghosa are not easy to read. So I hope that's a compliment, Susan.
It is. Like a withered leaf are you now. Death's messengers await you. You stand on the eve of your departure, yet you have made no provision for your journey. Make an island for yourself. Strive hard and become wise. Rid of impurities and cleansed of stain, you shall enter the celestial mode of the noble ones. Your life has come to an end now. You are setting forth into the presence of Yama, the king of death. No resting place is there for you on the way, yet you have made no provision for the journey. Make an island unto yourself, strive hard and become wise. Rid of impurities and cleansed of stain, you shall not come again to birth and decay. One by one, little by little, moment by moment, a wise man should remove his own impurities, as a smith removes his dross from silver.
Oh, thank you. That was lovely. You should be reading Shakespeare.
Oh, goodness.
Neil, would you like to read 235 through 239? Most of them are grouped, so I think you only have like 3 sets to read.
You are now like a yellowed leaf. Yama's henchmen are standing by. You stand at the door of death with no provisions for the journey. Make an island for yourself. Be quick in making effort. Be wise. Embellished, with corruption removed. You'll enter the divine realm of the noble ones. You are now at the end of life. You're headed for Yama's presence, with no resting place among the way, no provisions for the journey. Make an island for yourself. Be quick in making effort. Be wise. Embellished and corruption removed. You'll experience birth and old age no more. As a smith does with silver, the wise person gradually, bit by bit, moment by moment, removes impurities from herself.
Thank you. That was great. As we read through these 3 different texts, it's interesting to me which ones I favor at different points. The Geden Shirpo I thought was amazing at the first handful of them, and then this one I really like, Gil Fransdale's. It seems to be really clear, but it's kind of interesting. Each week, different texts kind of take the stage, and I thought that this is a really nice chapter. I think this puts in perspective our path and our journey. And I think here the first 4 verses kind of repeat the same idea, that you're a yellow leaf, meaning that you're a leaf, heading towards fall. You're looking at the end of your life, and the minions of the Lord of Death is waiting for you, who is Yama. And of course, Yama's not the devil. He's just, he's more of the Grim Reaper. He's just ushering people into it. But here they're painting a picture of common people who might not really have thought much about their lives, and they haven't really examined their lives much. Maybe they haven't done much in spiritual practice. And at this point comes reflection. Now that death is coming, and chances are you haven't really made much effort, which they mean by provisions for the journey. You haven't made much effort. You haven't earned much good karma or merit for the journey. This is problematic, right? But the advice is to make an island of yourself, and of course that's that peaceful island amidst the storm, right? It's even in our community prayer, a family, a home, and a refuge from the storm, to create islands of ourselves. And I like the word vigorous here, because I think though it's said quite a bit in scriptures about being energetic in the path, I think the practitioners don't get that message clear enough, that the Buddhist path should be one of a joyous effort, right? And we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. So for myself, when I wake up and I get out of bed, it's one of the things I think about. And it's kind of funny that, we can get into habits of kind of laziness. We can get into habits of ways we go about our lives. And you can easily shake those off and say, no, today I'm going to be energetic. I'm going to get to my things. I'm going to exercise. Most of us don't realize that we have a choice, or most of us think that those states have to arise on their own. It's not true. We can make up our minds anytime we want to be happy, to be energetic, to be kind, compassionate. And some might argue, well, is it authentic? And I would say, well, is the end result authentic? So, and then, of course, be energetic, be in understanding, clear away your impurities and faults, and you will reach the heavens of the saints. And that's a bit of a confusing term, because you have the heavens of the devas, which we've talked about before, of the godlike beings, but then you have the heaven realms of the Buddhas, which is found in Mahayana Buddhism. So I think generally they're just talking about having a great rebirth, reaching higher existence. And then we get into the next two verses, and they kind of talk about a little of the same. Now your time is running out, and soon the Lord of Death will be upon you. There are no havens on the journey. And you have no provisions. You haven't planned for this. You don't have the practices. You haven't earned any merit. And the advice here is to, again, make an island of yourself, but quickly become vigorous and wise. Clear away your impurities and faults, and no longer be subject to old age and death. And the next verse I find interesting. Little by little, by stages, moment to moment, the wise man clears away his faults, as a smith removes the dross, or the impurities, from silver. And what I like about this one further emphasizes the idea that the Buddhist path is incremental. So the Buddhism claims that there's different paths, or teachers claims that there's different paths. There's these quick paths to instant enlightenment, which each one of the traditions has a belief in. And then the traditional Buddhist path is one that's incremental. And the fact is that it's not about working hard and suffering, and one day, if you're lucky, balloons fall from the ceiling and you're an enlightened being and life has changed forever. I just don't, I believe that could be true for some people, but very few. For most of us, we don't awaken, we have a practice of awakening. It's a constant practice, and we have many, many moments of awakening that lead to the big awakening, right? So I like it when I run across these pieces that really emphasize that we're on an incremental path, that every day we become a little smarter, a little kinder, and we have time to be gentle on ourselves. If we do work, and we have for us, we are making provisions on the journey, right? We're all here doing just that. We're meditating, we're working. So the first verses don't apply to us. We're already the ones that are working. We're working, and we're all young enough to appreciate it. So the idea is that with an incremental path, we can relax, we can enjoy it, and work diligently in our studies. And for anybody that wants to comment on any of these, I can't see everyone. Maybe Neil can point out if you raise your hand, but please just join in if there's any questions or comments. But I thought the first lines were quite poetic and really pretty. Gil Fransdale did a really nice job of this, removing our blemishes and corruption. You'll experience birth and old age no more, which means that you will become fully enlightened and be out of the realm of rebirth. Okay, and here again, as the smith does with silver, the wise person gradually, bit by bit, moment to moment, removes impurity for herself. And so for each one of us, we have to decide whether we believe in a gradual path or a swift path. But it's funny how every tradition claims to have a swift path to enlightenment. And guess what? Each one of them claims theirs is the fastest. And the Mahayana, of course, claim it the most, but the Theravada also have this thing that's called a swift path, where you can reach enlightenment is in as few as 7 weeks, I think it is, or 7 years, or 7 months, or 7 years. So quite fascinating. Okay, enough of me blabbering on. Let's read some more. And Darcy, would you like to? Oh, we just have one to read here. Darcy, can you read this one? 240.
Yep. Just as iron is eaten away by the rust it produces, so do your own wrong actions lead you to destruction.
Thank you, Susan. 240.
Just as rust arising from iron eats away the base from which it arises, even so their own deeds lead transgressors to states of woe.
Thank you, Neil. 240.
As rust corrupts the very iron that formed it, so transgressions lead their doer to state of woe.
I don't think I have much to add. That's pretty clear. Darcy, would you like to read 241 through 243?
Lack of proper ritual is a flaw in a mantra. Lack of plaster is a flaw in a house. Laziness is a flaw in a family. Carelessness is a flaw in a guard. Misconduct is a flaw in women. Greed is a flaw in a donor. Impure teachings are a flaw in both this world and the next. But ignorance is worse than these. It is the worst of all faults. O monks, if you get rid of ignorance, you become free of all the rest.
Beautiful. Susan, 241 to 243.
Non-repetition is the bane of scriptures. Neglect is the bane of a home. Slovenliness is the bane of personal appearance. And heedlessness is the bane of a guard. Unchastity is the taint in a woman. Niggardliness is the taint in a giver. Taints indeed are all evil things, both in this world and the next. The next one?
Yes.
Okay. A worse taint than these is ignorance, the worst of all saints. Destroy this one taint and become taintless, O monks.
And 242, we said unchastity is the taint of people, I think is better. Let's say unwholesome sexuality is the taint of people. And Neil, would you like to read 243? Oh, I'm missing. Oh, that's right, 241 to 243. What? Neil, 241 to 243.
Oral teachings become corrupt when not recited. Homes are corrupted by inactivity. Sloth corrupts physical beauty. Negligence corrupts a guardian. Bad conduct is corruption in a person. Stinginess corrupts in a giver. Evil traits corrupt people in both this world and the next. More corrupt than these is ignorance, the greatest corruption. Having abandoned this corruption, monks remain corruption-free.
Thank you, Neil. I really like Gil Fronsdale's account of these. They seem really clear. And so most of them I don't think need much to talk about. They're just talking about kind of like the last one we talked about with rust that just eats itself alive. So do these, right? And but what they're alluding to is we have these problems, but there's no corruption that's worse than ignorance itself. So ignorance in Buddhism has a very special place. It's the first of the three fires, depending on the tradition. Mahayana listed first as ignorance, attachment, and aversion. And the reason ignorance is considered the worst is because All afflictions arise from ignorance. And maybe some of you have seen the Wheel of Life tanka or graphic in Tibetan Buddhism, and it has yamas, the big monster that's holding this giant wheel, and then inside are different sets of circles. And in the very center are three animals: a pig, a rooster, and a snake. And ignorance is represented by the pig, and from the pig's mouth come the snake and the rooster. And the idea is that all afflictions come from ignorance. But this ignorance is a very specific type of ignorance. It can mean general ignorance, because general ignorance kind of comes out of this specific type of ignorance. But what they're talking about here is it's ignorance. First of all, when they talk about ignorance, they define it as not knowing, knowing the wrong thing, or not wanting to know. And I'm always so fascinated by the last one. Not knowing, we all kind of understand that definition. Knowing the wrong thing, sure, that could be ignorance, but not wanting to know is really weird, isn't it? But maybe you know people that are like that. You know people that, you try to give them a little advice, or you try to recommend a book that could help, and they just don't want to hear it. They want to just go through life. No, this is my world. Don't rock the boat. Don't. I don't want any homework to do. I don't want to know what's better. I have one friend in particular I always think of when I think of this, that he'd have a problem and I knew I could help, and he never wanted to hear it. He just, leave me alone. So that's the idea of ignorance, but that's applied to a very specific topic. The ignorance, or the misunderstanding of the true nature of yourself and reality, which we talk about often, right? What does that mean to be ignorant of the true nature of yourself and reality? It's being ignorant into how you function as a being, who and what you are, how you relate to others, how you relate to the world, right? And what your idea of reality is, and how you relate to that reality. So you could easily just say it's ignorance to life. What is life? Your role in it and life itself. And as you could imagine, being ignorant to the workings of life doesn't put you in a very good position to live a really skillful life, right? I mean, that's kind of the first thing, is to get this understanding. So Buddhism is dedicated to that very thing. We call it right view, right perspective, right? Having the correct understanding of how life works. Knowing that, you know the rule book, right? You know your own operator's handbook, human being tarpa, and how I work, and I could look through the pages and say, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. So that's why ignorance is so important in Buddhism, is because it's the understanding of our lives as they are. Now, from this misunderstanding of who and what you are arise all these neurotic problems that we have, right? And one of the first things that arises is fear, of course, right? Because you don't really know who or what you are. You don't really know how you fit into the world. You have no security about the future. This creates great insecurity in us. And from that insecurity, so many neurotic qualities come through, like anger and jealousy and envy and more insecurity. So that's what they're talking about here. So, people can be stingy. We can have all these traits, but everything we're looking to work with in Buddhism is we're digging into that ignorance. Now, in some Theravada text, the Buddha's known to saying that the reason we suffer is because of desire. And that's a popular thing that people say about Buddhism, but it's a limited view. Yes, we do suffer. And of course, like we say here, the desire isn't the problem. And things in the world aren't the problem. It's our relationship to things. So desire isn't a problem because we can have wholesome desires. We could have mild desires that don't really, wanting to have a bag of chips and not having one around. That's not a problem. It's our relationship to those, right? It's that attachment, that grasping, that clinging. That itself is the real problem. So that grasping at desire comes from ignorance itself. So ignorance is the very beginning where it all begins. Okay. Would we have, we have a long one here, don't we? I think we're going to read them. Yeah, please.
This really ties into what we're going to be talking about for our final Skillful Living lesson. Like perfectly.
Isn't it? The whole class has been like that. Each week they all tie together.
Yeah.
Well said, Jen. So the next ones are going to be read together as well. Are you ready from Darcy? We have quite a few here. We're going to read from 244 to 248.
Okay. Life is easy for the shameless, for the boastful and debased, for the vicious and foul-mouthed, living in corruption. But life is difficult for the principled who wish to live simply, for the quiet and the faultless, those who seek to live purely. Whoever takes the life of another, who speaks with lying words, who takes what is not given, who wanders to another spouse, who drinks to drunkenness, which leads to dissipation, in this very lifetime accomplishes self-destruction. Look at the undisciplined, those who are intemperate. Take care lest desire and worldliness introduce you to long suffering.
Oh, you read that beautifully. Thank you. Oh, Susan, 244 to 248.
Easy for life is the shameless one who is impudent as a crow, is backbiting and forward, arrogant and corrupt. Difficult is life for the modest one who always seeks purity, is detached and unassuming, clean in life and discerning. One who destroys life, utters lies, takes what is not given, goes to another man's wife, and is addicted to intoxicating drinks. Such a man digs up his own root, even in this world. Know this, O good man, evil things are difficult to control. Let not greed and wickedness drag you into a protracted misery.
Thank you, that was beautiful. And Neil, you ready for this one? 244 to 248.
Life is, easy is life for someone without conscience, bold as a crow, obtrusive, deceitful, reckless and corrupt. Difficult is life for someone with a conscience, always searching for what's pure, discerning, sincere, cautious and clean living. One digs up one's own root here in this very world. If one kills, lies, steals, goes to another spouse, or gives oneself up to drink and intoxicants. Good person, know this, evil traits are reckless. Don't let greed and wrongdoing oppress you with long-term suffering.
Great job, thank you. I was puzzled by this one. Anybody else felt a little puzzled? Because I feel like the more I practice, the easier my life gets. My life is simple, but I had to think about it. And I think what it is that it's like initially, it's a lot easier to just follow the crowd, right? It's a lot easier to go out with your buddies and have beer, just do whatever, not think about morality, just like a pack of dogs, you just do whatever. But it's just easy to go with conditioned life. It's easy to go with the flow. For someone of conscious, depending on your environment you grow up in, we have to we have to stand up for ourselves, right? We have to go against the flow. And Neil, could you mute anybody that's not talking? We'll get a little bit of side noise. Thank you. Oh, very kind. And so, so I was thinking that it is true that when you first start the spiritual path, and then often if you're in environments with people that aren't living examined lives, that can be difficult. I know being a vegan can be tough when you're traveling because everyone has a different opinion. Some people make it very difficult. Some people will purposely feed me meat because they know that I don't eat meat, you know? And so I kind of got that. But the result of the examined life, the result of the spiritual path is an easier one. Because for other people, oftentimes their actions are creating more trouble for themselves, right? They go out drinking or something, they cause trouble. They wake up in the morning, they have to deal with that. Whereas spiritual people, I get in before dark, I go to bed early, I wake up, I don't really seem to have much problems. But I did have to think about this one to really get an idea of it. Did you notice in the first verse, they're outlining the five initial vows. Now they call the 5 lay vows of killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, committing sexual misconduct, and taking intoxicants. And so that was interesting that they use those. An interesting thing about the five initial vows, some believe that those were the very first monk vows. That in the Buddhist time, the only thing he asked, it even goes further than that. At the very beginning, it was said that there were no precepts for monks at all, because the few monastics that were following the Buddha were people that the Buddha had already known, and they were well behaved. He didn't have to guard their behavior. But as the Sangha got bigger and more people started coming in, some of them not so well behaved, they say one by one, the Buddha started to have to add precepts to tell people what to do and what not to do. And so the 5 were supposed to be the first of the monastic vows. And then later, they were kind of pushed aside. Nowadays, we see those and call those the 5 lay vows. They call them Ginying vows in Tibetan Buddhism. I had those vows for 5 years before I became a monastic, and we don't use them in SBT because I like our version better. We do the 10. We uphold the 10 virtuous acts, as well as many other groups do as well in all the various traditions. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. And they paint a nice picture of people living, people with conscience, that are pure and discerning and sincere, cautious, clean living. Isn't that a beautiful? We could just say wholesome. I like the word wholesome. I like those who cultivate goodness. We talk about in our affirmations. But they talk about here that for those that live a life, an unskillful life of unwholesomeness, people are just digging their own grave. That this kind of behavior, this kind of life doesn't help human beings to flourish, and it's reckless, right, as they say here. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to say about those. Yeah, so I think it paints a nice picture between those that live examined lives and those that live lives of just a conditioned habit life of living on autopilot, just following the pack and doing what other people say. Let's move on to the next 2. Darcy, would you like to read 249 and 250?
You can never predict what people will give. It depends on their faith and their involvement. Expecting food and drink from others Your mind will never settle day or night. Whoever cuts off this expectation, uproots it, and throws it away will be able to enter into meditation both by night and day.
Thank you. Susan, 249 and 250.
People give according to their faith or regard. If one becomes discontented with the food and drink given by others, one does not attain meditative absorption either by day or night. But he in who this discontent is fully destroyed, uprooted, and extinct, he attains absorption both by day and by night.
Beautifully done. And Neil, the 249 and 250 are grouped together in this one verse.
According to their faith, according to their satisfaction, people give. This being the case, if one is envious, only food and drink given to others, one does not attain samadhi. By day or by night, by cutting out, uprooting, and discarding this envious state, one gains samadhi, by day or by night.
Oh, well read. Thank you. I read a note where it claims that this was pertaining mostly to monastics. And I guess in the Buddhist day, monastics had a problem that they would, everyone's going house to house for their alms runs, and the people at the house would give different things to different people, and so it was a luck of the draw. Sometimes you're lucky if you get something, and sometimes you're not. And but I guess it created a lot of envy in the monks, that they'd be looking over in each other's alms bowls and being jealous that somebody else got something that they didn't. And in fact, it's one of the precepts in monk vows that I vow not to be envious of what my brother has in his alms bowl. And so I guess it was quite a problem. It reminded me of a story I was told when I was in retreat before becoming a monastic. And the story was this gentleman, and he's this monk, and he's going on rounds, and he loves mangoes. And they're doing rounds, and they're basically going to the same houses. And every day the homeowner gives a mango to other monks. And this goes on for quite a few days. And the guy's really getting infuriated. He's like, I love mangoes. That person, they know I love mangoes. Why isn't she giving me a mango? And it goes on and on. They talk about this, his envy, he becomes so angry that he's dying for a mango. I don't remember more of the story, but I thought it was funny. And then also, when you're a monk and you're traveling through South Asia, you start to hear about some of the tricks that monks do that nobody knows about. Like one of the rules, one of our vows is you're not allowed to flip your bowl, or you're not. Often they'll say you're not allowed to have more main course or meat than rice. And so what the monks would do is they'd walk with their alms bowl, and they knew this trick that they could kind of flip it, like you do a frying pan when it's full of vegetables, to stir it, and they'd flip it to put all the meat at the bottom and cover it up with rice. So then when they went to the house, the person would feel bad for them. Oh, they only have rice. We'll give them an extra helping of this. And so monks developed little tricks on how to get good food from their donors. And but nevertheless, I think that's what this is all applying to. But what's funny is it asserts that the monks that play these games, there's just no peace in their minds to actually obtain samadhi. And I thought it was quite interesting. But it's interesting as a monastic with owning very little. It's amazing how monastics can get caught up in those little things they own, right? Something just simple like food. I think I mentioned before in this group, I knew this monk at Sarah. He was a Western monk. And all he could talk about was this new mug he bought, right? Because you're only allowed a couple things. You have your begging bowl, but then you have a mug for tea. And he looked all over and he found the perfect mug, and he's got this mug. And all he do is talk about this stupid mug. What do you think of my mug? And it just shows you how we get so hyper-focused on little things when you don't own much, right? I own a backpack, and whatever fits in my backpack. Well, I become kind of very attentive of that. I remember somebody was walking around, and I was kind of keeping my bag close nearby, and they pointed at me and they said, you're very attached to that bag. Monks shouldn't have attachment. And I said, it's not attachment, it's wisdom. I know if I lose this bag, I'm in big trouble. Everything I own is in this one bag. Yeah. So anyways, I think this one really applies to monastics, but you can clearly see how you could apply this within your own life as well, whether you're envious of your neighbors or look not at the car in your neighbor's driveway before looking. Something plenty like that. Okay, let's read the next one. We have a single one here, Darcy, number 251.
There is no fire like desire, no monster like hatred. There is no net like delusion, no raging river like craving.
Thank you. Susan, 251.
There is no fire like lust. There is no grip like hatred. There is no net like delusion. There is no river like craving.
And Neil, 251.
There's no fire like lust, no grasping like hate, no snare like delusion, no river like craving.
Yeah, it's quite poetic, right? Just telling us the main faults, afflictions that we deal with. Kind of interesting how it's almost exact translation through the three. Just so well said, you don't need to say much. Huh? And I agree with it, boy. Lust, oh boy, is that a fire, huh? Just burns and burns. Okay, we have two more sets to go. Darcy, would you like to read 252 and 253?
It is easy to see the faults of others, but your own are difficult to see. You carefully sift through others' faults, but you hide your own like the loaded dice. When you focus on the faults of others, your perceptions soon become distorted, increasing your own imperfections. How far you are from their extinction.
Thank you. And Susan, would you like to read 252 and 253?
Easily seen is the fault of others, but one's own fault is difficult to see. Like chaff, one winnows another's faults and hides one's own, even as a crafty fowler hides behind sham branches. He who seeks another's faults, who is ever censorious, his cankers grow. He is far from destruction of the cankers.
Thank you. And Neil, 253 and 254.
If one focuses on others' faults and constantly takes offense, one's own toxins flourish, and one is far from their destruction. No path exists in space, no
I made a mistake, Neil. My apologies. It was supposed to be 251 and 252. Would you like to read those again?
It is easy to see faults in others, but hard to see one's own. One sifts out the faults of others like chaff, but conceals one's own, as a cheat conceals a bad throw of a dice. If one focuses on others' fault and constantly takes offense, one's own toxins flourish, and one is far from their destruction.
Thank you. Wonderful job. I thought it's interesting, this premise that when we focus on the faults of others, it actually makes our own. It changes our perception of reality and thereby increases our own. Isn't that interesting, huh? The mechanism of that is an interesting thing to contemplate. By becoming hypercritical of others, we change our perception. And I guess maybe it means that we become hypercritical of our own. Yeah, but nevertheless, I thought that was quite interesting. The first verse seems like every religion has a line like that, you know, whether it's Christianity with "Don't look at the splinter in your eye," but every group seems to share that. I thought the vocabulary in Buddhaghosa was so challenging, wasn't it? Like chaff in winnows. I guess winnow is the procedure of throwing the wheat in the air or the rice in the air and letting the chaff or the light particles, let the wind blow them away. That's what the actual practice of it is. I don't know what a fowler is. I guess that's a person who works with birds. I'm not sure. Someone who hunts wild birds for food. I have a handy little dictionary program that I can just check on things. Cankers are our afflictions and our limitations. Wonderful. Thank you all for that. That was very nice reading. And let's move on to the last two. Darcy, would you like to read 254 and 255?
You will never find a path in the sky or a pure monk caught up in the world. The worldly delight is self-centered action, while the Tathagata, thus gone, is free from self-centered activity. You will never find a path in the sky or a pure monk caught up in the world. There is no permanence in compounded things, and Buddhas are unshakable.
Lovely. Susan, the last two, 254 and 255.
There is no track in the sky and no recluse outside the Buddha's dispensation. Mankind delights in worldliness, but the Buddhas are free from worldliness. There is not a track in the sky and no recluse outside the Buddha's dispensation, and there are no conditioned things that are eternal and no instability in the Buddhas.
And Neil, these last two, 54 and 55. You're muted, Neil. We can't hear your lovely voice.
Sorry, I did click, it didn't go off.
I named Neil Tenzin Jam Young. Jam Young means soft, sweet voice.
No path exists in space. No contemplatives exist outside the Buddha's path. People are enamored with obsessive thoughts.
I got that.
Tathagatas are free from obsessive thinking. No path exists in space. No contemplatives exist outside Buddha's path. No creating things are eternal. No aggregation exists for Buddhas.
Well, some tough vocabulary in that one as well. We have this word Tathagata that comes up throughout the teaching. It's another phrase for the Buddha. I remember reading somewhere that the Buddha used that mainly for himself. He was always talking about the Tathagatas. We also have these phrases. We have contemplatives, we have renunciants in Buddha, a recluse in Buddhaghosa, and they're talking about strong practitioners that are outside of society, that are practicing hard. One thing I didn't like in Gil Fronsdale's, not Gil Fronsdale's work, but just the meaning of the sutra, was that no contemplatives exist outside the Buddhist path. And to me, it seems to imply that there are no great practitioners except Buddhists. And of course, we don't like to think that way in SBT. We like to be open-minded. Our vows don't allow it. We're not allowed to see ourselves as superior to other groups. But I thought that this was a few nice verses. The wording is quite interesting in each one. Maybe Gaten Schiphose is the best. So when they talk about you'll never find a path in the sky, I didn't see any notes on this, but I took it as there is no magical path to awakening. You know, you won't find a magical, easy path to awakening. And then, or you won't find a pure monk caught up in the world. Why? Because, let's say a pure practitioner, because pure practitioners aren't involved in the world. They've transcended that. The world delights in self-centered actions, while great practitioners are free from self-centered activities. So yeah, there's no magic path to awakening, and good practitioners just aren't caught up in all this worldly self-centered activity. Again, it says the same thing. There's no magical path. Good practitioners are not caught up in worldly things. There is no permanence in compound things. The Buddhas are unshakable. So that line is quite interesting in each one. So we talk about all compound things or all conditioned things or all assembled things as being impermanent by nature. In the next script, they say, there are no conditional things that are eternal. So it keeps painting a deeper and deeper picture, and no instability in the Buddhas. So they're claiming that the only stability in the world is in one's path and in one's realization. If you want stability, you're not going to find it in the world. You're not going to find it in conditioned things. Also remember that they often assert awakening, nirvana, enlightenment as an unconditioned state. So, which I've always had a debate with, but nevertheless, that helps us understand that line. And in Gil Fronsdale's, the last line says, no created things are eternal, and no agitation exists for Buddhas. So for Buddhas, it's just peace and harmony and security. And in created things, nothing's eternal. Everything is changing moment to moment, which means there's great insecurity, worry, fear in life itself and existence itself. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to share. Please, David.
Yeah, it's just a quickie. You said there that we in SBT are not allowed to, it's the vows or whatever, to see our path as being superior to other paths.
Sure.
I don't. I doubt if there's anybody in SBT that doesn't see their path as superior to other paths. Am I missing the point?
No, you're actually making the point really well. I guess in a proper way, SBT, this is part of the SBT monastic vows, that we're not to declare or assert publicly that we're better than everyone else. It's more of a point of humility. But clearly, all of us we would all be on a different path if we thought there was a better one. So no, like always, you make a brilliant point. So maybe I need to go back and look at that vow and get some clarity from it. But yeah, and also as agnostics, the idea that how certain can any of us be? I'm on this path because I think it's the best for me. I don't necessarily take it as far and say it's the best of all paths. I chose it because it's the best for me, but I'm also not arrogant enough to think that I know better than everybody else. I'm not arrogant to say to a Christian, oh, your path isn't as good as mine. Maybe they're right? When we're agnostics, we embrace uncertainty. Do any of us really know what's going to happen when we die? Man, you could, Krishna could be sitting there in a big chair, pointing his blue finger at you, saying, David, you picked the wrong path. The hell with you. You go to hell. Yeah, none of us really know, right? Now, the Buddhist path, you can practice it and you can see for yourself the benefits. You can experience them. But how far those benefits go, will I be reborn in my next life? None of us know. That's why we call it a belief. And that's why we don't teach it much in SBT, because we don't like to teach beliefs. We like to teach what the Buddha taught. Beliefs are up to every individual. I firmly believe each one of you is intelligent enough to, study the material from all religions and all ideologies and figure out for yourself what's right for you. I feel pretty confident in the Buddhist path, but I'm smart. I don't take it too far. I don't know the answer, so I can't tell anybody what is and is not. Sound good? Good. Anybody else want to share? Can I take this off the screen so I can see your lovely faces? There you are. Would anybody else like to talk about any of the aspects of this? I thought it was a good chapter. I enjoyed it. It seemed to have some really relevant, interesting meaning in it. It had a nice flavor, huh? Quite poetic. I thought it was quite poetic. Yeah. Yeah, I got a lot out of it. Miss
Some of
Darcy?
that, well, yeah, when we were reading that, some of it was like, yeah, I went through that. Yep, I did that.
I like passages that make me scratch my head, that make me have to ponder and contemplate. And especially that one that says, every common everyday life is easy. It's easy. I always thought, it seemed so difficult when I was doing it. But then I kind of understood, yeah. Initially, once you get in the habit of living a conscious life, then it becomes easier. But at the beginning, I remembered, it was tough to begin, wasn't it? Yeah. Neil?
With a bit about seeing faults in others, but not seeing our own faults, I heard or read something that you see faults in others, but what you're seeing is the same fault that's already within you, and that's why you become annoyed.
It's really a really popular, and it goes along with the adage that the universe is a mirror, and all what you're seeing is. I think I like to just stop a little short with it. That I do believe it's true, but I don't believe it's it's true in every case. I believe that often that's exactly what's happening, but not all the time. Some people annoy me just because they're annoying. Some people annoy me with stuff that I'm sure I don't do. But I do believe it's quite wise, isn't it? Yeah. And I remember in Freud there was this account that when people point out truths to us, it's annoying. And the analogy was something like, well, I'll come up with my own. So it was like, you have a gentleman who's a little on the lazy side, and he's supposed to clean the garage. Maybe you guys can relate to this. He's supposed to clean the garage, and he doesn't. He ends up just goofing around. And he comes home, his wife comes home, and he's in the garage, and she pulls up her car, and she innocently says, "Oh, I thought you were going to clean up the garage today." And he explodes at her, "Don't you tell me what to blah, 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 blah." And the reason he's annoyed is because he knows there's some truth into it, right? Where if the scenario was different, and he's a really productive person and does a lot of work, and the same thing happens, and his wife says that, he's not bothered at all because he doesn't take it as she's picking out a fault. He goes, "Yeah, I didn't feel like it today. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow." So I think there's a lot of those. I think we get annoyed in many, many ways. Also that mirror analogy, sometimes people will do things in ways that remind us of other people. Like somebody could say something to us and you hear it as your father when you were a child and you don't like that voice. So yeah, but as far as everything, that thought, they make it like an ultimate thing, that the universe is a mirror. Everything in the universe is just bouncing back from your own perception. And I don't believe that's true. And Buddhism doesn't either. The mind and mental factors don't work like that. That has a component to it, But there's also, because you're not just perceiving, you're actually projecting reality as well. So in a lot of senses, you kind of have to set up the scenario for it to come back to you as the mirror. So we are, the mirror is there, and we are, when we're here, and we're kind of both, you know, complex. Careful, Darcy, there's somebody behind you. I don't know who they are. I think you're safe. Okay. Would anybody like to share? Oh, we're running long. I thought this would be a fast one. How about if I get to our conclusion? Okay, I don't want to keep you guys so long on a Saturday. Anyways, you all know that I like to I just try to sum up some things here. I have some goofy ideas, and I'm just going to run through them. It is never too late to purify ourselves and to awaken. I like that in the first verses. We didn't talk about that, but they talked about even when you're the yellow leaf, it's giving you instructions on how to awaken. So it's never too late for us to awaken ourselves. Make yourselves an island of peace sheltered from the storm. Our awakening is an incremental process gained through the slow eradication of our wrong views within each and every moment. Incremental. Of all defilements, ignorance is the worst. Through its eradication, all other afflictions are destroyed. Buddhism believes that if you could hone in and destroy ignorance itself, all other afflictions disappear. Isn't that interesting, huh? Hatred, everything else, just gone. If you really comprehended right view, if you attained right view, all defilements would disappear with the blink of an eye. Isn't that something? It's easy to follow the crowd, to go along with the status quo, to not embrace and examine life. But for those who seek to live lives of simplicity, modesty, purity, life may seem harder day to day, but the true long-term benefits are immeasurable. Through killing, lying, stealing, sexual misconduct, through drunkenness and lust, we walk the path of self-destruction. By uprooting and giving up envy and the expectations, we clear the path to gaining meditative equipoise. Being overly focused on others' faults and constantly taking offense leads to the increase of our own afflictions. There is no magic path to liberation in the sky. There is no pure practitioners who are caught up in worldly existence. Common people are imprisoned by obsessive and exaggerated thinking. Great practitioners are not. All conditioned phenomena pass and fade away. The only security lies in awakening. Any questions or comments before we finish? Yeah, Darcy?
Could you write down the 3 types of ignorance and put that in the chat room?
Love to.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I'd like everybody to remember that the Sutra teachings are meant as practice instructions. So in order to get the greatest benefit, we need to engage fully with them, utilizing the 3 great objectives of study, contemplation, and meditation. Your work this week is to discover how these teachings apply to your daily life, transforming them from words on a page into a living Dharma. Next week, we'll be moving on to chapter 19 of the Dhammapada, entitled The Just. And I think we only have a few more chapters to go. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's 22 or 23 chapters, so pretty exciting. And before we go, I'd like to remind everyone that tomorrow is our Day of Observance retreat, and I hope everybody can make it. It's going to be great. It's also going to coincide with our last week of it'll begin the last week of our Skillful Living teaching series. Meditations and teachings will be at our regular times. We're also giving vows out tomorrow. Vow time has changed. We moved that to 1700 UTC. So we have a busy day full of a lot of fun stuff. Hope everybody can make it. So let's end today's class with our altruistic affirmation. May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well, may all be present, free of past regret and future worry. May all abide in constant appreciation, which is a source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Thanks everybody for coming. Remember that the SBT community was created for one purpose, to support you, the practitioner. Bye-bye. I'll see you tomorrow morning for retreats.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks to all the readers.
Bye.
Did great.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah,
See you tomorrow.
Bye.